And we're off. Usually, when I hit the record button, that's a cue for everyone in the neighbourhood to start mowing their lawns. I'm hoping that today we'll be safe. Fingers crossed. Which brings me to the topic at hand. Today, I'm going to give you my thoughts around superstition in general, but to start us off, I'd like to tell you a little story. Some time ago, a friend of mine built a house for himself in Indonesia. All materials were locally sourced, as was the extra manpower and technical expertise. This community effort resulted in a beautiful, enviably affordable home set deep in one of Bali's tropical lowland forests. Many of the evenings I've spent in that Southeast Asia-flavoured part of the world have been consumed by an engrossing spectator sport involving geckos. To visit is to know precisely what I mean. Once the sun sets, these gravity-defying insectivorous lizards take up strategic positions around ceiling or wall-mounted electric lights. And then they wait. Dozens of them appear from all over, drawn to any artificial illumination. While they wait, the geckos pose and hiss at each other, defending the best positions, those closest to the light. We would watch them rapidly scurrying about over our heads, oblivious to the Newtonian principles that keep everything else so grounded. As if for our entertainment, a moth would come fluttering out of the darkness every so often and jostle erratically around the light. This was the moment we had all been waiting for. Suddenly, the game was on. If that moth stopped to rest, even for a moment, it was doomed. Morbid, I know. Having picked a personal favourite in advance, we humans gasp and cheer as each gecko lunges for the prize. I say we humans. Local residents are typically apathetic to this miniature feeding tournament. The nightly ambushing of confused moths by hungry geckos is so widespread in Southeast Asia that only tourists seem to notice. However, an absence of these little hunters from a well-lit house is regarded as a terrible omen. For a week or so after the build was completed, my friend's house was totally bereft of geckos. Not only that, but the windows rattled in their frames, and the taps ran with brown sludge. This was classic, albeit low-key haunted house stuff. So my friend was convinced that an angry spirit was to blame, and that his new pad needed to be blessed. It's the sincerity of this kind of interpretation that really makes me wonder. Traditionally, house blessings of the kind my friend was proposing should have happened before the land was developed, but for some reason it had been overlooked. Still, the local priest was called, a house blessing ceremony was carried out, and my friend listened for any indication that the malign presence had vacated his home. Reassurance came at dusk, with the happy sound of ha-ah, ha-ah, being shouted to and fro between the rafters. Lizards were finally moving in. Coincidentally, the arrival of house geckos was accompanied by spontaneous clean running water and the conspicuous silence of all antisocial window panes. This was the corroboration my friend needed to declare his haunting factual and the exorcism effective. When he came to tell me this story, my friend, let's give him a name, Philoseudes. Phil for short. Phil was surprised by my skepticism. He demanded to know what possible alternative explanation I could suggest for the miraculous event at his house. When it comes to unexplained phenomenon, and there are many, I find it useful to distinguish between puzzles and mysteries. The answer to a puzzle, while admittedly unknown, will likely take one of several predictable forms. For example, if I've lost my house keys, I usually have some idea of where to start looking. In the pocket of whatever I was last wearing, or down between the sofa cushions are good places to start. This, by my definition, is a puzzle, because reasonable solutions immediately spring to mind. A mystery, on the other hand, presents no readily conceivable explanation. If I returned home one evening, keys in hand, to find that my entire front door was missing, that would be a bona fide mystery. A simple pat-down wouldn't suffice. A whole door rarely gets left in trouser pockets or drops between sofa cushions. I suggested to Phil that all he had, in the case of his haunting, were 3 interesting puzzles, each potentially linked to the recent construction project. I took a wild stab at each in turn, just to show that the supernatural wasn't the only explanation on the table. I'm no carpenter, but generally speaking, when wood gets wet, it expands. Drying wood will contract. Please, hold your applause. If Phil's wooden window frames were wet when assembled, plausible in a rainforest, then allowed to dry, the panes might start to rattle. It would only take a bout of heavy rain or elevated humidity to expand the wood again, pinching the glass tight and keeping it quiet. I'm no plumber, but as for the dirty water, who knows how long all that plumbing had stagnated under the ground? Mud could have collected in the water tank. Rust could have built up in unused pipes. In either case, residual muck was bound to flush out eventually. Finally, and I'm no herpetologist, as Phil well knew, but even the temporary absence of geckos didn't strike me as that mysterious. Sawn wood, fresh paint, welding, grouting, and varnish all produce lingering odours. There may be many more olfactory bombardments emanating from a new house that humans cannot detect. I don't know if nocturnal lizards rely heavily on scent to find their way, but I'm quite sure that moths do. If geckos are smart enough to realise that flying meals get attracted to lights, they might know which fragrances keep dinner away, and that pickings would be slim where the smell of deforestation was hanging in the air. Now, it's true these suggestions were little more than top-of-my-head guesses, and probably wrong. But they were testable and based in material reality. Phil confessed that my ideas might hold some explanatory power in isolation, but all 3 symptoms naturally occurring and disappearing simultaneously was extraordinarily unlikely. This is why he'd felt justified labelling the situation miraculous. Which begs the question, what distinguishes a miracle from just an extraordinarily unlikely event? I've always been suspicious of those who cry miracle for 2 reasons. Firstly, miracles are so often used to add credence to someone's prior beliefs in supernatural forces. Some find tremendous value in leaving certain mysteries unsolved. These kinds of miracles seem to be overwhelmingly fortuitous to the individuals involved. Excessively so. In fact, to reach miracle status, good fortune often forms part of the defining criteria. Only desirable outcomes can be used to reinforce a person's faith in kind and helpful deities. So, unfortunate chance events, like vanishing doors, don't tend to qualify as miracles. If this seems unfair to you, that's because it is. To eliminate such obvious confirmation bias, we'd have to grant that miracles were any temporary suspension in the laws of nature, regardless of practical benefit. As an aside, it hasn't gone unnoticed that many religions use miracles to legitimize their faith, while conveniently dismissing or ignoring miracles used in support of rival beliefs. These conflicts appear despite the fact that any extraordinary unlikely event is still infinitely more likely than a momentary breakdown in the physical laws of the universe. Top-notch philosopher David Hume said, quote, "A miracle is a violation of the laws of nature, and because firm and unalterable experience has established these laws, the case against a miracle is, just because it is a miracle, as complete as any argument from experience can possibly be imagined to be." End quote. This is my second point of contention with the concept of miracles. If no natural laws have been broken, a genuine miracle seems even less plausible, no matter how unfathomably unlikely the event. Imagine you're flying high in a plane, looking down on the houses and trees and fields. People are mere specks. Wine bottles, vanishingly so. Now, imagine you're a raindrop, falling from the same vertiginous height. The wind whips around you as you descend, hurling you left and right. Other raindrops collide with you, merging and breaking apart time and again. Your trajectory is as chaotic and unpredictable as any in the known universe, and the ground races towards you at speed. What would be the chances that you, at the conclusion of such an improbable journey, land squarely in the tapered neck of an open wine bottle? Such a thing must be unlikely beyond any calculation. Yet, if you leave an empty bottle out in the rain, water will miraculously start to collect inside. Each one of those raindrops filling the bottle will have traced a fantastically unlikely path through the air, from miles up in the atmosphere. In a completely random world, unburdened by supernatural interference, with an infinitude of chaotic interacting parts, we would expect a large number of extraordinary coincidences to occur on a daily basis. That we could never hope to predict such events is the definition of randomness. When assessing this, or any other miraculous claim, all we ever need to ask is, which is more likely, that the claim is true or that those making the claim are mistaken? If an angel, spirit, god, ghost, or demon ever appeared before someone, probability would dictate that they were either dreaming, hallucinating, having some sort of meltdown, or willfully entertaining some kind of fantasy. They may even have been deliberately misled by someone else. All these alternative possibilities are each very well documented in human beings. David Hume, who was not present at our discussion, said something similar to this. Quote, "Always I reject the greater miracle. If the falsehood of his testimony would be more miraculous than the event which he relates, then, and not till then, can he pretend to command my belief or opinion." End quote. Hume was an endearingly no-nonsense kind of guy. Just considering how malleable, suggestible, fallible, biased, inconsistent, and superstitious the human mind and memory frequently reveal themselves to be, it's a safe bet that no true miracle has ever taken place. Ever. The laws of nature are relentless, never ceasing, no matter how fleetingly. More than this, while alluding to miracles and the supernatural explains nothing, Both beliefs actively undermine the grasp of reality a person needs to resolve problems in the real world. Fun fact: the natural causes of some happenings, even common ones, are often too complex to be easily understood. Well, colour me surprised. It's as if the universe never promised us simplicity. Until verifiable solutions emerge, the trinity of puzzling traits that Phil's house possessed amounts to no more than one compound unlikely event, at best. No mystery, no miracle, and definitely no need to invoke any supernatural influence. I asked Phil if he knew how those geckos were able to move so athletically across his walls without dropping to the floor. If I told you that they weren't using sharp claws or oozing glue from their tiny feet, then how do they do it? Phil conceded that he had no idea. Common sense intuitions of universal physics seemed to be being shunned, though it never occurred to Phil to call this a miracle, or even supernatural. Mysteries that fuel prior superstitions are often the only ones that people find appealing. It's popular to wonder what the US government is hiding inside Area 51, less so to ask why there are no insects living in the ocean. One of these questions entertains a confirmation bias, that our leaders cannot be trusted. And have you noticed that more people care what the position of the planets might reveal about their future than wonder why no burrowing dinosaur has ever been discovered? That's right, there are no burrowing dinosaurs, as far as I'm aware. Why is that? Obviously, I'm no paleontologist, but looking at how many specialized burrowers we have in the world today, from frogs to tortoises to meerkats to owls, it's quite inexplicable why the dinosaurs, for all their spectacular diversity, overlooked such a successful lifestyle throughout their entire reign. It seems the battle for our collective consideration between nature and supernature is unevenly matched. Quirks of insects and dinosaurs, and other genuinely perplexing aspects of the natural world, go unknown or unappreciated, presumably because they aren't directly relevant to human affairs, which seems a tad shallow. There are so many scientific questions out there which ache for more people to be engaged in the process of discovery. Nobody knows what several mushroom species gain by glowing in the dark. Even their underground roots glow. It's a mystery how whales know to change their song every few years, all over the world, all at the same time. But the answers to these questions will require falsifiable hypotheses, suggested logically and tested empirically. If we knew why some animals, like baboons, exchange loads of complex information using only basic grunts and gestures, while other creatures, like cuttlefish, with an astonishingly rich means of communication, live relatively simple social lives, we might know more about the origins of our own language, cognition, and conscious perception. If we knew more about the function and evolution of DNA, whether any alternative inheritable biological material might be possible, and what conditions mark the outermost limits for the existence of life, well, we'd be several steps closer to conquering the universe. Whether subtle, unexpected, or bewilderingly technical, I'm convinced that all mysteries are solvable without deviating from the laws of physics. A perfect example is that of the gecko's grip. The answer to this little gem is well known and, like many things in nature, is far more amazing than anyone could have presumed. But it is not miraculous. It's definitely well beyond my personal expertise to explain how surface area can tap into van der Waals forces and amplify a creature's adherence to a surface. There are many excellent YouTube videos out there explaining just that. My point is, now that we understand this mechanism, can it be recreated artificially to allow a person to climb flat walls? Spoiler alert, yes. When we understand something, we can use it. No illnesses are sensibly diagnosed as witchcraft. No recovery can be medically attributed to magic. Why does humanity keep shortchanging itself with talk of miracles? The universe is far more beautiful, interesting, and credible than concepts like karma, fate, and divine intervention could ever do justice to. Touch wood. Yes, well, we're going to try something a bit different next episode, continuing with the theme of mysteries, but it's going to be a live three-way discussion between myself and a couple of friends, just to see if that kind of wiggle soup works. We make absolutely no guarantees.